Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to British Muslim TV. You're watching Single Muslim Live, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. And I'm your relationship coach, here today with another episode. And I want to welcome all of you streaming from different platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on, live on Skype TV. And I welcome all of you. And I also want to hear all of you, with your comments on SingleMuslim.com Facebook as well. I know that you're from all over the world, and I really appreciate your support and tuning in. We are obviously continuing with different topics to help individuals who are looking towards marriage. And this is part 2 of the topic, which is really relevant and important and a very, very vital part of relationships. The importance of sex during marriage. And also, this is for couples that are already in relationships and to give awareness and information for people who are entering into marriages. So I just want to warn the viewers that this is After the Watershed, adult content, explicit language, only for the purpose of actually the content and the theme. And we are here live taking calls and comments. If you want to remain anonymous, you're welcome to do so. If you want to call into the studio and speak live, the number's at the bottom of your screen, 01924231083. And I look forward to hearing some of your voices with your comments and questions. You have amazing guests today from last week. We are also welcoming her back again to discuss this very, very relevant issue. And we have today and tonight, obviously in London, but from the US, we have Estela Rodriguez Jebril. Assalamu alaikum, Estela. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Very well, and so happy, even more so, to see you and to have you joining us. Whereabouts exactly again are you from in the States?
I'm in the East Coast in Massachusetts, so it's about 4:30 here, and the sun is still out, and alhamdulillah, it's been a really nice day.
Thank you so much again for joining us. We have a very important topic, and we've had, quite a good, decent amount of feedback. And the relevance of speaking about this is to help individuals to continue in their marriages successfully. And if they're looking for being, really good partners for each other, then this is part of what we need to consider when we're entering into relationships. So what is your thoughts when, for example, people enter into marriages without having an understanding of the actual intimacy, the actual physical aspect, because we're not taught that in our schools, we're not even spoken to with regards to it in our homes. So what do you think now should be the next step for us individuals to move forward? As you know, you and I both coach in, couples especially, and this is a problem. We're not just addressing this for no reason. It's genuine issues out there, and that's why we're really, happy to take this controversial topic that some may see, but actually we need to address it for those particular reasons.
Yes, and because intimacy between a husband and a wife is like the most private aspect of that relationship, going into it without any knowledge, going into it, being afraid to talk about the subject is really a red flag. It's really a red flag. And it's so important to be able to recognize, how we have to start this education, this sexual education at a young age, because it's not that we want to, introduce a topic that is going to lead people astray. No, we want to talk about this openly so that there is clarity, so that there's understanding, so that as we come into these unions, we know, how important it is to really bind with each other, because that's what marriage is. It's a bonding. And if you can't talk about sex, then you're going to hit a lot of challenges. You're going to hit a lot of walls.
No, absolutely true. I think you've introduced it very well, and it's important if we have this topic and we don't address it. That means we cannot communicate what are the issues, and if we cannot communicate what are the issues, we cannot come up with the solutions. And unfortunately, there are practical steps to take with regards to fulfilling your relationships, and this is a very big part of it. So we do have a Facebook comment already. We have Shazia Khan. She's saying that intimacy in marriage is very important, and she thanks us for talking about it. Thank you, Shazia, for your comment. We really appreciate that. Yes, we have had a few that are reluctant for this to be mentioned because, they think that it's Muslim, it's women, and it's against Islamic principles. But we need to make that clear that at the end of the day, you can follow who you want to follow, but there's wide studies out there psychologically and Islamically to actually have this outside, in a platform in a respectful way, because we need to have the education from us Muslims so that it doesn't get lost in translation when there are issues because they're getting the information which is not in line with the Islamic teachings. And I think people need to understand this very, very clearly. So what are the problems that actually occur in marriages with regards to the physical intimacy?
A lot of the problems really lie on both sides, simply because there's a lack of understanding. There's so many myths out there, right? People go into marriages believing that, women don't have a sexual needs or sexual desires. And there's also this misunderstanding that, men are not self-conscious about themselves.
Wow.
So it is so important to be able to really understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm not a scholar, but, you get to a certain age. I'm 58 years old. I've been married for 32 years. I've been doing work for a long time. And you hear it mentioned in the Quran, you hear it mentioned in the Hadith that, that is half of our, marriage is half of our religion because two people come together to love each other through that we don't do anywhere else, being intimate with each other. So it's so important to be able to understand that, Islam and our faith does not view sensuality and sexuality in a negative light, and we need to be able to really overcome those barriers and those walls talking about it, because we're not doing what we see out there in secular society. We're not being vulgar, we're not talking, even though it's a topic that is a problem in the community, we're not being pornographic, but we know that that is out there. We know that the extreme that is not halal, that is haram, is out there. And because of that, we have to be able to talk about this subject so that we can have our married couples come together and be able to trust each other, be able to openly talk about their insecurities and talk about, and be vulnerable with each other.
No, that's so true. It is definitely a topic that Muslim, whether you're female or male, that do need to tackle it, and we're not talking about it enough in the pulpits even. And it's definitely something that is in the Quran, quite explicit language if you understand Arabic as well, which will actually be quite surprising to a lot of people. And it is mainly cultural based if they are actually stating that it's shameful, shouldn't be spoken about. I think, we do need to have much more knowledge and wisdom around this topic. Again, I would like to also remind the viewers it is a live call-in show. Please, if you want to add to the conversation or ask a question, you have the amazing Estela all the way from the States to take your call and answer anything that you desire. And that's in the bottom of your screen, 01924231083. You actually made a really important point as well, stating that women also have their urges, their desires. They need to be treated in a particular way. There is a difference of intimacy that men need to understand about women, and as well as women need to understand about men. What is that in particular? I mean, I know we're generalizing here, and obviously it depends on the individual, but on a whole, you know, we're looking at it from a psychological point of view, from the point that you and I both coach couples and individuals, and this topic does come up a lot. So it's from really good experience. So what are your thoughts on regards to that?
You know, so many women really get into this place of feeling shame because of the feelings that they have. And, you know, it's, you know, when we're attracted to another human being, you know, and this is an attraction that happens even before we get married. So we have to become comfortable with those feelings. And if we don't become comfortable with those feelings, then when we get into those relationships, then it's going to be really hard to tell your husband, you know, what is pleasurable to you. And your husband, you know, if he is not nurtured and raised in a way that this is a topic that can be talked about openly, then he's going to have his own story and his own mindset. You know, is there something wrong with my wife because she, you know, wants me to please her? And, you know, so we have to be so careful. And this is why this conversation is so important. There can be these stories that we tell ourselves that create that shame, that create that deep, you know, insecurity. And that is what will result in an unhealthy marriage. Men have desires, women have desires. It's something that's been innately, you know, put in us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that the first, you know, the first, you know, outcome that we want from this intimacy is for life to continue, procreation.
Mm-hmm.
Without you wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be here. You know, yeah. It's so interesting how, you know, we categorize things in these little boxes, right? But really, life depends on that intimacy, cultivating, you know, an ability to feel confident within yourself. When you can feel confident within yourself and you go into a marriage having a level of confidence, what happens is that then you can cultivate it as a couple. And this is where our strength really is in our marriages as Muslims. Our strength is in our couples. I always tell people, you know, think about all those, you know, power couples that we hear about, right? Mm. In Hollywood. Like, look at these two people that came together. No, the true power couples are, you know, those Muslims that can come together and really acknowledge their needs. And they're different. Sometimes a man can have a really high libido, and sometimes the woman has a really high libido, you know. And it's something that if you don't talk about it, you don't understand that, you know, those, because of hormones, because of even diet, because of stress, they're going to change. And you're going to go through different transitions, even if you start out at a very young age, you know.
Brilliant. Thank you. We do have a comment on Facebook, which we will, and we do have callers coming in. I just want to remind you that there are standard network rates that do apply. And on this particular subject, we do acknowledge that the producers are getting calls from people that want to remain anonymous, and we are, we do actually take that into consideration, and you're more than welcome. We have a digital voice that's going to represent your question or comment. Okay, so let's take our first question.
It has been many months now, and my husband keeps on denying me in bed. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. He always says he is tired, and I end up crying alone because I feel rejected. I swallowed my pride and ask for sex, but he always refuses. What should I do?
Thank you so much for that question, and it is quite a serious topic, and I really do thank whoever's called in to, be brave enough to even bring that to light, because this is what this show is all about, and this is now highlighting how important this is. What is your take on this, Estela?
You know, that's a very common scenario in a lot of marriages. You know, and our men are out in the world with high levels of stress. And when a couple doesn't know how to come together, and intimacy is not just about having sex. It's not just about of having sex. And there should be no shame about, learning how to comfort each other, because that scenario right there definitely indicates that there is a huge need for love, a huge need for compassion, huge need for intimacy. And there's a loss of what to do. How can it be cultivated to increase the confidence in the man? Because this is the thing about men. If men don't perform at a certain level, if they don't feel like they're less of a man. So can you imagine a man that his libido is going down for whatever reason and can't perform for his wife, but his wife is coming to ask because, for intimacy, and he is, denying her? Can you imagine what might be going on in that man's mind? So this is painful for both sides. This is painful for both sides. Why we have to be able to talk about this, because the number one factor in a reduced libido for men is stress. Stress and disease. It's so correlated, and it's a common thing. And so many men, because they experience that, what do? So many men will think that maybe they're just not attracted to their wife. So if they go off and have an affair, maybe that's gonna, get them, gonna lead them astray. But when we don't have these conversations, so what I advise for this couple is to be courageous enough to really show that love and that empathy for each other. Like, if the wife can be able to, be empathetic towards her husband and use her natural ability of being empathetic, of being compassionate, of being loving, and allow that to stimulate him. Because what happens is men, this mindset of I have to perform. And then it's, kind of like being put on stage, right? Like, if I don't do the job, I'm going to be criticized. I'm going to be judged. And when we can't have these honest and open conversations, that can go in a really, really dangerous and harmful direction.
No, thank you for that. I do have lots of comments on Facebook as well, but I have Abdul Rahim, my producers. When people marry, they need to talk openly about their feelings and their sexual needs, what they like, what they dislike, and but have respect for each other is very important. That's a very interesting comment. And age is just numbers. It's about chemistry. That's very true. But we have another anonymous caller's question.
I am a mature man. I have tried all forms of dating and introductory services, but have failed to find a spouse. What's your advice? I want to get married and find my life partner and don't want to suppress my natural emotions.
That was another brother who wants to remain anonymous. So I just want to say thank you again for your question. It is quite touching that we're getting some really personal calls, and there are issues out there, and we hope we can, address this. Again, if you do want to call in, the number is 01924-231-083. I want to thank everybody so far that has been commenting and phoning in. My producer's telling me that we are getting lots of, interaction right now, and I hope that we can address this even further. For the previous caller, I hope that we actually answered your question, and if it does continue, please do seek professional help, because, a lot of the times we sometimes don't realize what we see is just limited and is advisable. If this continues, to please seek some, professional advice out there. Again, for this particular caller, looking for somebody and trying to suppress his natural desire and needs and how to fulfill that, what are your options with regards to giving some sort of feedback? So-called dating, looking and introductory events has not, happened, and a lot of people are finding it very difficult to actually find their match. And I understand that one part of it is trying to obviously fulfill a desire and meet your needs Islamically as well. There's so much involved into it. what would you advise, give guidance to this caller?
And my guidance is always the same for the brothers as well as the sisters. One thing that's really important to be able to do when you're actually, know that you're ready to attract your other half is you have to recognize and believe and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us in pairs. And for us to be able to attract our other half towards us, we have to really be in a place where we know ourselves. We know ourselves at the physical level, at the emotional level, and at the spiritual level. Many times people just live in their heads and they're like, okay, I'm this age now and I want to get married. But it's so important to really look deeper. What is it that you have to offer? What is it that what is your list of characteristics that you're looking for the other person? Is your list of things that you're looking for this long list, and you're not really recognizing that there has to be some flexibility. There has to be some flexibility. It's always important for the brothers and the sisters to recognize the work that they have to do with themselves to be able to really attract. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already decreed that we all were created in pairs. So we all have a responsibility. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you good to your family? Are you good to your loved ones? And by that, I don't mean, are you buying them gifts? Are you spending money on them? No. How is your character? It's so important when we hit those walls where, like women often say, there's no more good men out there. All the good men are gone. And what that really is a mirror to the internal work that woman has to do with herself. And I say that to the brothers too. When you say, I've tried every area, I've tried every arena, what that really is, it's a mirror to yourself that you have to be able to say, what is it that I have to work on within me so that I can create the bandwidth to attract my other half that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already created for me. For women, it's always interesting, and I know this is kind of going off to the side a little bit, because men can have, and I'm not encouraging or, men can have up to 4 wives, right? Women can only have 1 wife. So for us as women,
one husband, yeah.
There's so many, areas that we have to really assess within ourselves with our security, with our own self, our own confidence and our own self-esteem. For men, what's so important is to look at their responsibility. What is it that they can really handle and meet those needs? There's so many areas that have to be explored, If you're hitting walls, that is what needs to be done. More self-exploration.
Definitely. I think, there is a certain mindset that has to be awakened and a different perspective and lens. And when you enter the world of self-development, there comes, more self-awareness, and you are learning things from a different level. And I understand what you're saying completely, but I do hear the same people reoccurring sort of issues saying that we've looked everywhere. And I'm like, really, you haven't looked everywhere. You haven't done everything. And, again, it comes to the self and questioning yourself. Are you inviting? Have you tried certain things? Are you actually, living a flourishing life for yourself first, which is actually going to be attractive, not just for you, but for everybody else? And it's really important that we do that, because again, we can get really sidetracked by looking outside and not looking within. And, when you look within, that's when you can kind of let go and you can be smiling and happy and actually even unexpectedly find your partner. So inshallah, I do again urge, a lot of the people out there that are struggling. And again, if they think they've tried everything, well, try coaching. Honestly, it really does work. It really helps the individual on so many levels, and it filters to not just your relationships for your, potential partner, but relationships around you generally, and even in your career path or wherever it may be. So again, I just want to welcome everybody who's watching, and thank you so much, watching from all different platforms, listening to us and supporting the channel, British Muslim TV, and this is a Single Muslim Live sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. Please do download the app, and you will find that even doing and filling out profiles, gives you a self of awareness as to how you're looking at yourself and how you want to be projecting yourself to somebody else. So I also want to ask you, Estela, when it comes to people that are not experienced, because a lot of them that are watching here are single, probably never been and entered into relationships. I've had a lot of clients recently that have come to me saying that we are scared to enter a relationship because we hear all the stories, especially divorce or unfulfilled marriages, things like that. So we need to understand that when we come from a place of no experience, how would you enter into a relationship? It's okay to communicate once you've already entered into a relationship, but beforehand, in an Islamic way, we're obviously not going to go dating and, going into any sort of relationship without it being halal. So we are totally new, and we're getting all the information from outside. So what gives you the confidence as an individual who's firstly entering it into a marriage without the real experience? How would you go about learning? Is it, exploring with each other at that time, or is there any sort of preparation beforehand?
I think gaining knowledge in a platform like this, being open-minded and asking questions. Education is key. Education is key. The first time that you get into a marriage, the first time that you say, I'm now married, it's not the first time that you've actually had sensation, that you've felt that kind of chemistry within your body. We, as soon as we go through puberty, we start feeling these sensations. When I work with couples that have actually experienced some traumatic things in their lives that is affecting their marriage in a negative way, what I always do with them is I go back and I help them understand like their memories and their experiences in their lives. So what I really always suggest is to go back and really be honest about your experiences and what you felt. It's a natural thing to, be in middle school and high school and to feel your heart palpitating for somebody because you think they're attractive, right? But you're not going to act on that. You're not going to act on that. And it really starts in the family system. It really starts in the system. If you don't have a family where you can go home and talk openly to your mom, talk openly to your dad, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to your friends, right? To get advice. But these are natural things that are happening out there. And for any of you that are listening that are parents, these are conversations that can absolutely be had in a very appropriate way, in a very polite way, and still be an open conversation where young people will trust and come and ask questions and let their parents know. I mean, children, our children should not be coming to us only when they're in that mindset of like, okay, it's time for me to get married now. Now I'm going to talk to my mom. Now I'm going to go talk to my dad. No, that's like, the train has come and gone. The train has come and gone. These are conversations that can be had at, different stages of life and with appropriateness. And it really just, that question just really reminds me of the importance of that component within the families to be able to talk openly. And that's the first safe space that anyone has. That is the first thing that we should create for our upcoming generations. Now, if you are somebody that doesn't have that because it hasn't been cultivated, and let's say you're, in your late teens or your early 20s, then it's important to reach out to professionals like myself so that, and this is why I do what I do. And this is probably why you do what you do, because there is a need we want to, most important of all, always know that what we're doing and the way we're communicating and that the way we're navigating through life is pleasing to Allah.
Absolutely. And there are lots of issues around, when you mentioned before, there's issues around pornography. It's not just outside the Muslim community, it's inside the community. There's also self-satisfaction, masturbation that a lot of young people are entering into, whether they are or single or even married couples, unfortunately. So, and it's men and women that are entering into these sort of like acts. There's people talk, and whenever we talk about marriage and we talk about intimacy, sex, it's always like, oh, we need to stay away from zina, from fornication, of course. But we cannot do these unless we have the conversation about what is the actual understanding of consent, for example. What is the understanding of what is how to be with each other and your limits and how to fulfill each other. And each one has their rights, even in Islam, as a man and as a woman. And a lot of us in the cultures that we sort of see around us, it's like it's only a man's need and the women cannot express it or too shy to express it. Or like you said, if they're in a relationship for so long, it becomes quite monotonous and a ritual. And what is it with regards to relationships that have been around for so long, when they are in a long-term relationship and the spark has kind of died? What do you do then? Because that's why we're having such a huge rate of divorce. A lot of it, yes, they say because of loss of connection, but the connection comes from many areas. And a lot of it is the communication, the interaction, and the intimacy on many forms. What is your sort of guidance with regards to couples that are not actually taking that interest after years?
You know, it's interesting that, you know, intimacy is all about connection, right? And connection is all about communication. So there's been this lack of communication, this lack of trust, this inability to come and really be vulnerable with each other. And, you know, and that is, there's no other relationship where you can really, you know, let your guard down if you cultivate that kind of vulnerability. So when it's missing, it's so important to be able to really recognize what is it that you can do to shift things. And it really always goes back to that self-care. As women, many times as women, you know, if like, you know, the example that was given with the call, if our husband is saying that he's tired, you know, as women, we have the same excuse sometimes, right? Some women will say, you know, will deny sex and make an excuse. So like, I'm not feeling well, or I have a headache. There's always another underlying thing. For men, it does tend to be stress or worry. So there are these unresolved issues that are not, that the trust is missing to be able to actually address them. For women, it always is rooted in their own self-care, putting themselves last, putting themselves on the back burner. Like, you know, I'm, you know, becoming martyrs and thinking that, you know, if we do for everybody else, then we'll get what is rightfully ours because we gave. But what we have to remember is that, you know, whenever we do anything, we should do it with, no intention of receiving anything back, right? Even though that is what the natural outcome is when the intention is from the purest place. What is so important is for a woman, from the side of the woman, the perspective of the woman is very different than the man. For a woman, you know, to really bring that spark back into your marriage, you have to look at, you know, how are you taking care of yourself? Are you, you know, is your husband not, and not that it's, you know, it might sound sexist, you know, maybe, you know, as a woman, you're, you know, cleaning the house, cooking dinner, you know, you're not taking care of yourself. Your husband comes in and he's like, you're a mess, right? You're a mess. So we have to take that, you know, we have to cultivate that self-worth and that self-value within ourselves. You know, our men, when, you know, they're off working and they're grinding, their boss is getting on their back, they're stressed out because maybe they're not making productivity, and then they come home And as soon as they walk in the door, because men are taught to not show their emotions, right? So when they walk in the door, they're not going to come in crying and saying, oh, I had such a hard day. No, most likely they're going to come in and they're going to have like a stern look on their face. And we have to know how to interpret each other's body language. We have to know how to interpret each other's facial expressions. And if we've been in a marriage for a few years and we haven't learned that, then
these are great points, Estela, and we'll pick them up after the break. I just want to say that, we've got a lot of interaction on Facebook. My producer is saying, Hassan from Mogadishu sends his salams, and he says you should understand each other, and a love comes from that understanding. And the love comes also when each other are openly satisfied with one another. And we need to communicate about that. Sister Nazma says, Salaam alaikum, wa alaikum salam, Sister Nazma. And Salaam alaikum to all our viewers who are actually watching from the UAE, the subcontinent, and Indonesia. It's amazing to understand that this is reaching so many places around the globe. It's fascinating right now. We will be taking a break for Salah in London, but head over to SingleMuslim.com if you're outside that time zone. And we'll be talking to Estela after the break, and inshallah, we will see you soon. Please stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. Don't forget to head over to the app and you can sign in for free today. I just want to go over the fact that we were talking really deeply about the topic about the importance of sex in a marriage. This is after the watershed, and we are being quite explicit with the language only because of the theme. And if there are anyone that would like to direct the conversation, you're more than welcome to do so by calling into the studio on 01924231083. I want to welcome people from around the world watching on various platforms. They're watching from, all over the world on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and I welcome you all. Thank you so much for joining me again. Again, I want to also introduce my guest, my lovely guest, Estela Rodriguez Jebril. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much.
Wa alaikum assalam.
We had an interesting first half, and I'm ready to go back into it a lot deeper. We have had some callers that did try, as my producer has just mentioned, during the break, and unfortunately, we lost them. So please, whoever's been calling, do call in again, and do hold on. We will be taking your calls. There's sometimes a queue, but please do just be patient with us. And also, we've been, taking a lot of Facebook comments, and we will continue to do so as we continue with our conversation. As we were discussing before the break with regards to men and women, do you think there's a difference between men and women? We always have this view that men are more sexual and intimate and women are more emotional, so that they would want more of an experience during sexual intercourse, whereas men are not necessarily about that. How far do you think there is truth in it? Or do you think that sometimes there are occasions, if you were married, that a man just needs to release and have his desires, and women need to also understand that it cannot always be an experience with roses and flowers and petals, and even the whole experience of the actual intercourse to be where it's long-winded, and we want to get into it where people understand that there is difference, there's different stages. What are your thoughts on that, Estela?
Well, when you have a trusting relationship, when you're in a marriage and you have a trusting relationship, you can read each other. Your man just needs, to release himself, for lack of a better term. And as women, for us, it is more important to we need time. We need time. And it's even mentioned in the Quran that, to be playful, because as women, you know, we want to get to that place of really, you know, being fulfilled. There's a difference between, you know, how a man gets fulfilled, but fulfillment for a man is not necessarily just about ejaculation. So that is one of them. But when you have, and this is why the connection and really trusting each other and really being able to be vulnerable with each other is so important, because once you understand the nuances of your spouse, then you're going to know how to fulfill each other. And this is why it is so important to be able to talk openly about these subjects. Because if you can't, then your marriage becomes torturous. It becomes painful, because a man has his needs, and if he can't talk to his wife openly about his needs, who is he going to go to? If a woman has her needs and she can't talk to her husband openly about her needs, who is she going to go to? Once you can't maintain that openness and that vulnerability, you know, the marriage is really susceptible to falling apart. Can you have a healthy relationship without sex? Most likely no. There's always going to be a level of intimacy for the woman that is needed. There's always going to be a level of intimacy for the man that is needed. And that's going to entail that sexual connection with each other. So, you know, it's also really important to understand that if you don't talk about these subjects, if you don't feel comfortable openly talking about sex and sensuality, you're setting yourself up to really have a lot of hardship in your marriage. And it's unnecessary. It's really unnecessary, because the knowledge is there. And it doesn't have to be, like we said earlier, you know, vulgar or inappropriate. It's about cultivating that courage from within. You really have to be able to cultivate that courage from within to be able to be honest. You know, for a variety of reasons in my own marriage, I filed for divorce 4 different times. And those 4 times for me were actually a blessing. So I'm sharing that because sometimes you do have to go into this place of taking action that feels wrong or that feels unsafe. And I'm not outside of your marriage. I'm talking about reaching out for help. I'm talking about not allowing yourself to believe that only ways to through it. You have to be willing to ask for help.
Yeah, no, it's really important to ask for help. And there are different stages within a relationship that we will differ in ourselves, and it does affect not just yourself, but the other partner. And if you know each other well, you will see there is a trigger, there is a difference, there is something that your gut will be telling you that something's not normal, something's not right. So we do need to seek that sort of extra advice and extra sort of like professional even help. And I don't think, especially in our communities, that this is something that people even want to admit, let alone to look outside for advice. And luckily, so far I've reached out to a lot of people to say that I am a relationship coach, trained and qualified. So I've actually had a lot of people outside and a lot also in the community that are reaching out for their marital issues. And it's the young that are actually coming into their relationships not knowing what to do and really scared because they're not fulfilling each other or not getting fulfilled themselves, and they want some sort of advice and guidance with regards to that. So we're not just addressing these topics because it's just for entertainment. These are real issues that exist out there, unfortunately, and we're here to give those solutions and practical tips so that we can actually enhance those marriages that's going to be sustainable in the long term, much more fulfilled and happier. That's the whole point. So remember, this is not something that we're just doing just because it sounds like yes, it's controversial and we want to talk about this. No, there is a real deep rooted issue, and there's loads, and you and I myself deal with couples and people all the time with regards to this issue. The other issue is couples that don't have the understanding after years, thinking that because they're older, that they may not have that need. And I think that age really doesn't, come into it in that way, because yes, you might be excited at the beginning of your relationship, and like you said, there's pressures over time, and then children come involved. How do children play a role with regards to parenting and them now new parents? Because I know a lot of, women say to me, well, my child now sleeps in my bed, and they've been doing it for so long. And I always kind of stand back, because I'm like, I wish you were my client, because, we do need to talk here. As much as I know we love our children when they're first born, and it's a really touchy subject, and a lot of us don't want to admit that we might even, neglect our partners. And yes, we do change as women, and men also have that change. But regardless, the relationship still exists. And a lot of problems do occur after couples that have had children, because there's not the consideration there. And even children's lives are going to be much happier if you still concentrate on fulfilling your actual marital relationship, even if you have kids. What are your thoughts on that, Estela?
Yeah, absolutely important to address that. What children want is for their parents to be together, for their parents to,
yes,
really loving each other. That's actually what children want to see. With every broken marriage that I've worked with, divorced families, and that I've also done family work with the children to help them adjust. Mm-hmm. The number one thing that children want to see is their parents being happy. So when, as women, when we have our children, yes, we have this, nurturing aspect to us where we want to make sure that, every single one of their needs is met. But we have to remember that child came into being because of the marriage, The marriage actually has to take priority. If you're taking care of your marriage and you're maintaining your marriage in a healthy way, then your child rearing of your children is going to be, so much better. It's going to be so much better. When a woman, and I'm one of those women that, because it was easy for me, I nursed all of my babies. It was easier for the nursing to take place in my bed. But I also recognized that I had to also, teach my children to adjust to being away from me, after the age. So there is a balance. Mm-hmm. And it sounds kind of redundant, but it always does go back to communication. It goes back to communication. As a couple, you want to maintain that connection with each other. And as a husband and wife, you want to be good co-parents in raising your children. That means that you have to model to them, and you have to be the best example. When women, use their children as an excuse, perhaps because they see, that strain in the marriage, that is a very dangerous thing to do. And it's very harmful for the child. And it's not going to allow you to really even recognize what needs to be addressed in the marriage if that is, the behavior that is taking place.
Definitely. I just want to quickly recognize and acknowledge Jenna from the Gambia, who is saying salamu alaikum to everybody at the studio. Wa alaikum salam. And she says, thank you so much for addressing this topic. It's really, really, important topic. And brother Jenna from Gambia. So again, I really want to thank you all for all your comments and questions. There's still time before we end the show. So if you did want to have a quick call, you can please do so by calling in 01924231083. We've touched on very, very many issues right now, but Estela's still here with us. And, we are obviously talking with regards to what we actually feel. But if you really want to direct it for the last, few minutes, you are more welcome to do so. So Estela, just closing on this topic so quickly, again, it's come, to the end of the show. What would be your general guidance? As we know as coaches, we don't give advice, we give guidance, we give support, and we build each other up. And we lift each other up. So what would be the takeaway and, a couple of minutes of, your sort of like, interaction with regards to the audience and your takeaway for today?
And there's two perspectives, right? There's that perspective of the single sister, the single brother that are looking for the marriage. And then there's that perspective of, the couple that has already been married and is maybe past the, infatuation and obsessive part of the marriage. And now is like recognizing that, wow, maybe things aren't as great as I thought they were. What's going on here? With that, it's like in any relationship, a marriage takes work. There's a reason why, part of the vows are through thick and thin, at least in the US and in America, right? It's like through thick and thin. And I'm not talking about, abuse. I'm not talking about a situation that is harmful. I'm just talking about the ups and downs that are natural in life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that he's going to test us. We're going to have tests, and some of the tests are in our marriages. So we have to realize that, we're going to have to roll up our sleeves. We're going to have to work and be present and be okay with the emotions that are coming up and learn how to navigate through them. Learn how to acknowledge where they're rooted. Learn, what it takes to recognize that there was hurt that was caused, not at the abusive level, and how are you going to heal that so that we know that the strongest relationships are those relationships that have overcome hardship, So we have to recognize that there's going to have to be work to be done. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves. It's not just going to be all, roses and, beautiful, meals and dinners. There's going to be, that hard work that needs to be done. And for those that are single, the best thing that you can do to prepare yourself to step into that role of completing your other half is to truly cultivate your self-worth and your value. Because what that will do is it will rise your capacity to be empathetic, your capacity to be loving and compassionate. So when you hit those hard moments, you're going to be ready to work through them.
Thank you. Oh, wow. It's, I could listen to you all evening, to be honest, but unfortunately we've come to the end of the show. I want to thank you personally and from the team here for your participation, for all your insights, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Estela. Inshallah, we have raised so much different sort of, issues around this topic that has been helpful to all of your viewers. Thank you so much, Estela. Assalamu alaikum. And I want to thank you all, dear viewers, for watching from wherever you have been, all your comments, all your, phone calls. And it's been absolutely amazing and a pleasure to be here and to actually serve you all from around the world. Thank you so much. Please do, inshallah, enjoy Eid, and we will have, a break ourselves, but inshallah we'll be back after that week and continue on the show. But we're also going to have some best bits of the show next week, and we hope to see you soon. Have a lovely Eid. Assalamu alaikum.